in the admin console, your databases are only as good as the servers you choose to run them on. Having fast, reliable operation on your server is essential for the best performance within your database. Some of the most decisions you'll make regarding your server's performance happen well before you ever install FileMaker Server. So we're going to walk through some of those choices with you today so you're prepared to make them as they come up. Before we do that, though, I want to introduce FileMaker Academy a bit. If you can scroll forward for me, Alan, to that FileMaker Academy screen. There we go. Our host here, FileMaker Academy, is a great group. We're proud to be a charter member. And to really explain what it is, it's a consortium of leading FileMaker development companies across the United States. All of these companies you see on the screen in front of you here are Business Alliance members who represent the best of the best within the FileMaker development world. Our purpose in joining forces is to further educate FileMaker users and developers and to encourage best practices and foster further adoption of the software. So we're really excited that you're here today and hoping you're able to take a little piece of that away with you. A little housekeeping before we get started. If you can bump forward a slide, Alan. Please type questions into the GoToMeeting question box as Alan's talking. I'll kind of gather those as we go, and we'll cover them all at the end. If we don't get to your question for some reason today, Alan and I will do our very best to get in touch with you and cover it with you personally over the phone or most likely by email. If for any reason you're having a hard time getting it through, please feel free to send a question to info@skeletonkey.com. Please allow me to introduce today's speaker, Alan Kurtlink. Alan's an information analyst, FileMaker certified developer, and FileMaker authorized trainer here at Skeleton Key. In the 17 or so years he's been working with FileMaker, Alan's run his own business. He's authored some articles for FileMaker Advisor magazine and white papers for FileMaker. I have the joy of interacting with Alan on almost a daily basis, and more importantly get to talk to clients he works with, and clients tell me he's one of the easiest developers in the world to work with. You combine that with his superb technical skills, you've really got a superhero developer, and I'm excited to hear him talk today. I'm sure that he's blushing at this point, but without further ado, I'm going to hand the reins over to Alan Kurtlink and wish him well. Go for it, Alan.
All right, thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to be taking a look at, as I named it, FileMaker Server Beyond the Admin Console. Today, we won't really be talking about the admin console or the FileMaker Server software itself very much, but instead what we want to take a look at is the hardware that you're running your server on. This is something that over the years I've seen kind of shipwreck a lot of solutions. A lot of work goes into the product, but if you don't have a great box to run it on, or even a good box to run it on, the end result can be less than stellar. So what we want to do today is educate you on some of the decisions that you can make to start off well here. Make sure that you spend your money wisely when you're looking at hardware, and make sure that you get the best server you can to really let FileMaker shine and show your solution in the best possible light. So the first thing we want to do is we want to talk briefly about how a database server differs from a file server. We want to look at choosing server hardware. We're going to look at configuring the OS, and then just a little bit about resources where you can learn more. Then at the end, we're going to do a Q&A session. As Jason mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions throughout the course of the webinar, just type them into your GoToMeeting console there, and Jason will kind of collect those and run them by me at the end. All right, so let's dive in. So FileMaker server, or a file server versus a database server. What is the difference? It is a subtle difference in some ways, but one thing that we see is that a lot of people that have experience, or their IT department has experience setting up a file server, they'll just, when we tell them we need another machine for a database server, they go, oh, well, you know, I'll just order another file server, and we'll have it just like all of our others. It'll be fine. But there are some differences there that can really stand out. First of all, a file server generally has large capacity drives, and also you tend to, you know, it can be acceptable. I won't say this in all cases, but it can sometimes be acceptable to run other applications on a file server. Whereas with a database server, in contrast with large capacity drives, we don't care about capacity necessarily. A lot of times our databases don't need a large drive, but what they do need is a really fast drive. We want to serve that data up to our users just as fast as we possibly can. We definitely want to avoid running other applications, and we want to make sure that file sharing is disabled. Even if the live database files are excluded, it's generally just a best practice to leave that turned off. So once we start looking at which platform we want to choose for our server, the first question is, do we want to go with a Mac or a PC? In a lot of cases, that's a very easy decision to make because your organization is all Windows or all Mac. And I certainly think that the most important thing here when you're making this decision is that the best platform for your server is the one you know how to use. If you're an all Mac office, and that's what all your IT people are familiar with, don't go out and buy a Windows server necessarily just for your FileMaker server. If you don't know how to administer that box, if you're going to run into headaches there, then sticking with a Mac is the best way to go, and vice versa. If you're an all Windows office, don't feel that you need to go with a Mac to run your server on. We do want to list out just a few kind of pros and cons of the various platforms. Running under the Mac OS, these days Apple no longer offers hardware specifically designed as a server. They do offer the Mac Mini server and the Mac Pro configured as a server, but now that the X servers are out of their product line, there's nothing that's really built from the ground up as a server. Also, and this next one may just be something that I've been running across lately. Java support seems like it can be problematic. Part of that is probably the fact that support is transitioning over from, you know, Apple distributing the updates to Oracle, but there seem to be some issues there at the moment. And also, if you do accidentally install a Java update on your Mac OS server, getting that rolled back is really difficult. Unlike on a PC, it's not falling off a log easy on a PC, but at least it's doable. The other thing you may want to consider here is the web server that you're running. On the Mac OS, it's going to be Apache. On a Windows server, it's going to be IIS. With a PC, we've got a wide range of hardware to choose from, and that can be both a good and a bad thing. There's so much out there, sometimes it's a little difficult to pin down exactly what you may need or what may be best for your particular situation. It's also more widely targeted by viruses. I'm certainly not going to say that the Mac isn't targeted or suggest that you not run antivirus. You should certainly run antivirus on both platforms. but you are going to be more likely to get hit if you are running a PC. Then finally there, as we mentioned before, web server-wise, we're running IIS. All right, so let's look at selecting hardware. FileMaker does provide us a minimum and recommended system requirement setup for FileMaker Server and FileMaker Server Advanced. There on the products page, we're going to take a look at today RAM, processor, hard drives, and discuss a little bit about optional components. RAM, while it's certainly important, I wouldn't say that this is something that you want to put the most money into. You certainly want to get at least 8 gigs, but if you've got extra money, this isn't necessary. Putting additional RAM into the machine isn't going to get you a lot of bang for your buck, but certainly don't skimp on this. So 8 gigs is a good rule of thumb there, whether you're running Mac OS or Windows. Processor. You want to get at least a dual core. Actually, these days I think it's probably pretty hard to pick up a server, if it is really a server, and not get at least a dual core. But that is the recommended minimum there. And while this is a very important component, as I said a while ago, most servers are going to already have a more than adequate processor in the base model. So this isn't the first place where I would put additional money. What we do want to look at is the hard drives. This is really the heart and soul of your server here. If you're going to consider this a server, I think you should at least have 2 drives in the machine. You can combine drives in a RAID to improve security and or performance, and we're going to, if you're not familiar with what RAID is, we will be looking at that in just a few moments. As you're considering drives, there are a few essential stats that you want to make sure that you take into consideration. Capacity, certainly one, but I want to say here that more is not necessarily better. As we mentioned earlier, on a database server, you don't necessarily need huge drives. Your database, in most cases, isn't going to, fill up a 1 terabyte drive, and the more space you have, in some ways, that's just more space to get fragmented over. So don't get fooled into thinking that more is better here. You do want to look at the RPMs on the drive. This isn't always an indication of absolute speed, but higher numbers are better here. We want to drive with a healthy amount of cache to store the data. And we want to look at the average seek time, average write time, and average latency as well. And we want to be sure that we're looking at the average times for all of these numbers. We want to make sure that we don't get caught up on the peak numbers here. Peak numbers are, what the drive can do in a split second, but not necessarily maintain. All right, hard drive types. There are 3 main types of drives that you're going to encounter these days: SATA, SAS, and SSD. SATA, or serial ATA, is certainly the most common drive that you'll see out there. These tend to be high capacity. They're relatively inexpensive. Overall, they tend to be slower. And you really see a wide variety of quality in these drives. The machine that you buy at Office Depot or Staples, or any machine, its base drive is going to be a SATA drive in most cases. There are certainly higher end SATA drives, but if you do include SATA drives in your server, make sure that they are of a higher quality. Next we have SAS, or serial attached SCSI. These tend to be also high capacity drives, but also in addition they're very high performance most times. It's not unusual to see 10,000 and up to 15,000 RPM drives in these, and if you do need both higher capacity and high performance, this is certainly the way to go. They do also cost a little bit more, but usually if this is going to be a machine that's going to be seeing a lot of use, investing a little extra in SAS drives is well worth it. Finally, we have SSD drives, or solid state. These are completely different from hard drives as we've known them in the past. I think these are becoming common enough that most people are probably familiar with them now, but these have no platters, no motors to spin, so with those, without those moving parts, reliability is theoretically higher with these. They are very fast. Their capacity tends to be lower, and the price per gigabyte is also very high on these. But fortunately for us, as we've said, high capacity is not necessarily the name of the game with a database server, so these work very well in a database server. Once we've got our drives picked out, one thing that we can do to further increase performance is to implement what's called a RAID, or a redundant array of independent disks. This is where we combine two or more drives into a single logical unit. So from the OS's perspective, in most cases, it's going to see this drive, or these multiple drives, as basically one single drive. Data is going to be divided up or replicated among multiple drives, and this is going to allow us to improve performance, resilience, and or reliability, and possibly capacity. Now, RAID is kind of a blanket term, but there are a lot of different ways that this can be implemented. We're going to focus on just a few of these, the ones that are most applicable to a database server. And these are, what we want to talk about mainly today are levels 1 and 10. You do see some use of RAID 5 with database servers. We're not really going to talk about that too much today. In our opinion, generally, if you're going to go with 5, you might as well go on up to a RAID 10, which offers both improved speed and reliability. So we generally don't put out a lot of RAID 5 arrays. Two terms that I want to make sure that you're aware of as we're looking at these are mirroring and striping. Mirroring means that we write the same data to multiple disks to improve reliability, so that data is being mirrored between the two or more drives. With striping, instead of writing necessarily the same data to multiple disks, we're taking a portion of the data and we're dividing that up amongst multiple drives. That allows us to access the data faster, because we can get, let's say, we can get, say, half the data from each drive. So level 1 is mirroring. It requires at least 2 drives, and so we're writing data to both drives at the same time. The data is preserved if either drive fails. So if one of our drives fails, we haven't really lost anything. We can replace that drive in the array and rebuild the RAID, and we're we're fine. There is no performance benefit to this type unless you want to count not being out if one of your drives dies. Next we have RAID 10. Sometimes this is also referred to as RAID 1 plus 0. This is going to have both mirroring and striping. And the reason that we don't just do this all the time is that instead of just 2 drives, this is going to require 4 drives. So we're going to write basically half the data. If we implement it with 4 drives, we would write half the data to 2 of the drives, and then we would mirror those drives onto the other 2 drives. So this one gives us both performance and reliability. In order to set up a RAID, we have to have a controller of some type. And this can be either software or hardware based. In some instances, like if you're running a Mac mini server, you know, we don't have a card slot to put in a hardware based RAID controller. So there's really nothing we can do but use a software controller for our RAID. However, when we can, we certainly want to avoid that. Software controllers are going to rely on the computer's CPU to manage this, and they're never going to give you anywhere near the performance that you're going to get out of a hardware controlled RAID array. And that said, even within hardware controlled, we still have a wide range of performance ability. So don't assume that just because you have a RAID card that you're getting the most you can out of your array. We want to certainly be sure to spend adequately here. If you put a lot of money into your drives, you can really shoot yourself in the foot by cheaping out on the controller at the last minute. All right. So let's look at something besides just some PowerPoint slides here. I apologize that this topic does not necessarily lend itself to a whole lot of show and tell, but we'll do as much as we can. Let's take a look at some sample configurations of both Mac and PC servers here. So what I have done is go to the Apple Store, went to Shop Mac here, selected Mac Mini, and then selected the Mac Mini server. So what we get with this is 2 drives automatically. We get 2 hard drives in here with no optical drive, and we also get Mac OS X server installed. The base setup on this is just 4 gigs of memory. Here I would say that $100 is well spent to bump that up to 8 gigs. The other thing you can do if you want to save a little money there are some great third-party companies out there that can sell you a RAM upgrade for less than $100 to get you on up to 8 gigs. Hard drive. On our acceptable level, I'd say we can stick with 2 1-terabyte drives. I'm not crazy about that, but it does get you by. You'll notice here that this is only a 5400 RPM drive, so this is this is not going to be a very high performance machine. That said, if you've got a small work group, the fact that you can actually get a machine with 2 drives in it for around $1,000 is not too bad. Otherwise, we're really going to leave this as is. So that's you notice I didn't label this good in my slide, but I would call this acceptable. The next level on this, I would say, would be to go up